Mediocre Cover Band Guitar Guy. How's everybody doing? Tonight's topic is going to be something that some older folks and some younger folks need to take into consideration when playing in a band and starting a band, and that's your work. We've talked about it before, but we've never really gone into detail to some jobs like retail. Okay? If you work a job that has any connection to retail, guaranteed weekends are hard for you to get off. I moved from the city and started working for Dominion, which was owned by Loblaws. And holy shit, was it ever hard to get time off. I had one manager who, I worked in the grocery department. I had one manager who gave us a schedule that you were off every second weekend. Every second Saturday night you were off. Made it hard to do gigs on Friday nights sometimes. When I was doing original stuff, I'd always say to the guys, take the latest time slot available, and I should be able to make it, because we used to work 4 to 12s, okay? I didn't mind if I worked in the morning and had to get up. That wasn't a big deal. I was in my 20s. We could do that shit all the time, right? And but it was really hard, and I remember the first time I ever encountered anybody in a band, I was actually working in Carbonear at the Dominion, because I managed to get kept on when I came into the city. And we had a bassist who worked with us. He started playing in a band with some really good friends of mine when their bassist left, and I don't know, he got work offshore somewhere. And he joined the band. He was working with me, and these guys finally got their first friggin' gig in the city. Like, it was a big deal. And all he asked for off was a Saturday. We had a lot of guys working there, and we had a really tangly grocery manager, and he's still with that company now, but he was really tangly. And this kid, we'll call him, because he was 19 at the time, goes and says, hey, got a gig with my band Saturday night. Can I get this Saturday off, or can I work the 6 a.m. shift and get off so I can drive to the city and meet up and get this gig? He rarely worked a Saturday evening till 9 in Carbonear. That's when we closed. And they were like, no, you can't have it. You can't do this. You can't have it. You're going to work this shift, and that's all you can do. And he ended up quitting. And I thought, okay, that's just like a weird thing. You're not going to give him that off. I wasn't playing at the time. It was one of those times in my life when it was right after I came out of a band that I talked about in one of my last videos about getting pushed out, And anyhow, I'd been jamming with some people. We didn't have anything lined up, so I was like, okay, what's going to happen to me? I moved. I went to the city. I went to work for Loblaws, and the opportunity came. Me and a co-worker joined up with this guy who had recorded a record. He wanted to put a band together, so we were kind of just hired. He hired a bassist to go with it. It was me and the drummer and himself. He played rhythm guitar. And the time came, we both had a gig coming on Saturday. And this was back in a time when you went on stage at 10 p.m. We had to go to him and say this is what was going on. And this was the first grocery manager we had. And he looks at us and he says, so you both need Saturday night off? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, I can't give both of you Saturday off, though. Somebody's going to have to work Saturday. We had a small department. So I ended up working an 8 to 4 shift. The other guy got it off. And that's all that was to it. He did say to us guys, like, I can't do this every single weekend, and we were like, no, it's that's fine. We don't plan on doing it every weekend. At the time, we really didn't know what was going to happen, but we had to work on that night first before we could do anything else. Now this guy, whose name was John, who was our boss, he was a pretty good guy in that regard. Sorry for getting time off. If you really, really needed something, he'd try to work with you. We had a second guy come in right after him, and he was the same way. He's like, guys, I can help you out a bit. But I can't give you every weekend off. Then we had a third guy come in. We told him our situation. He's like, oh, that's cool. yeah, you both can have Saturday off. And it ended up one of us had to work Friday day. We had a full weekend one time, and it was like, okay, you guys can have Friday off, but one of you got to work Friday morning, blah, blah, blah. So he worked Friday morning, and I had it off, and I had like the whole weekend off. I was like, holy shit. And we weren't working Sundays at the time, believe it or not, to my upper Canadian and American viewers. We had the Shop Closings Act here, which changed in like 1997. And we got to do it. And then this is where it got really bad. I was no longer playing with this group, and that coworker who played drums was long gone. He went and got an education and a real job. And luckily, this guy came along because it prompted me to leave and do better with my life, somewhat. But this guy comes in, and I had a gig coming, and I went and told him, and man, he lost his mind because I was brazen enough to ask for a Saturday night off. I just worked about 21 of them and hadn't played in all that time because we just put this band together. And I'm like, hey, we got a gig. Can I get it off? And I ended up getting it off. I will say, like, but I really had to work at it. He came back to me and said, no more. You're not getting any more. But I think 5 or 6 days later, I ended up putting my notice in and going on to the beautiful world of private investigation. That was a job, I tell you. Uh, and that job worked out perfectly. Whenever I had gigs, I could take the time off. I pretty much worked my own schedule at that. Even though I worked for a company, we went in once a month, took a boatload of work, and went and came back when that work was done. Right, so you worked at your own pace and on your own time, and it was good that way. And then I went and started my own little trucking business, and that was cool because I didn't work weekends at all. So it was great. But I know those were the troubles I personally had, and that I'm trying to relate here to you, is that if you're going to put a band together, you got to keep that into one big consideration. Like if you're going to work on the weekend, and how hard it might be to get time off. I was actually driving for a company after I came back after the oil patch. Now that was a weird job altogether, uh, because I'd have like a stretch of 3 weeks where I was home, and if you were going to do anything, that would be the time to do it. But anyway, I ended up working for a trucking company locally, and we had to work every second weekend in the daytime, which wasn't bad. There was a lot of times I sucked it up and went to work after, getting off stage 3 a.m. I was behind the wheel of a truck at 6 a.m., putting 500 and 600 kilometers behind me in a run of a day, and then go out and gig again that night. But we ended up in the situation where we started playing gigs out of town, and we were lucky enough to book a lot of them on times when I didn't have to work my weekend, or I could go to work and get off at noon and then drive out of town and make the gig late at night. Like you're really tired. But anyway, after a while, I had one instance where I was going to be out of town and it was going to be a long trip, and I needed all day Saturday off. And the guy who owned the company, he was a little bit sticky on, oh, you got to be here. That's it. The operations manager and dispatcher were like, I don't care. As long as somebody shows up to work Saturday morning and puts their ass in a truck and goes and does what they're supposed to do, it's all cool. So anyway, I go and I approach one of the guys and I'm like, hey, I need a favor. Do you want to switch Saturdays? And he's like, kind of good and kind of not. It was like a whole weird thing. He's like, well, I'm not going to switch Saturdays, but I will take your Saturday for the extra pay. And I thought, okay, that's just as good. I've got a paying gig and I'll do that. The owner of the company finds out and comes to me, and he was so condescending about it, man. He's like, well, why do you need that weekend off? And I said, well, I need it off because I got a gig. I'm playing in a band. And he goes, oh, well, my son, he named his son's name, played in a band when he was 14. I guess that's it when you go to work for robots, though. But anyway, guys, keep that into consideration. Keep your work schedules and if you're traveling a lot, keep those things in. I've gotten fill in work, luckily, because of that. That was awesome.